these are the 7 general principles of natural law, the Hermetic principles. But the Hermetic tradition is named such because it's hermetically sealed, like natural law is. Natural law is hermetically sealed. It is binding principles that are immutable. They are laws that are in operation that cannot be changed. Hence, they are hermetically sealed. So, these 7 general principles, they are mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, which is a huge one, which we'll be getting into, and gender. Now, I'm going to briefly describe what each of these are and what they are about. The principle of mentalism states that the all, everything in creation, is actually a manifestation of mind. Okay? What this means is everything that happens has to be a result of a mental state which preceded it. Everything. For anything to exist, thoughts had to form first, and then they formed the physical reality after. The universe itself is a mental construct of the Creator. Thoughts lead to the manifestation of things and events. Thoughts create things and conditions. They cannot just magically manifest themselves. Thought comes first. Thoughts create our state of existence and the quality of our experience here on earth. Therefore, we should be responsible for everything that we create by being responsible for that which we think, because the thought processes are what are driving the behaviors. People behave the way they do because they have certain belief systems embedded in the mind and running like a program. Their thoughts and their emotions are driving their actions. The behavior's not magically suddenly going to just change. The thoughts and emotions have to change because they're the driving force behind the behavior. That's when reality will change. If you want to change reality, you yourself have to change the way you think, because the way you think is not conducive to the requirements for getting what you say you want. So that's the principle of mentalism. The principle of correspondence states that that which is above is similar or like to that which is below. So what this means is it's a mirror, okay? The above is like the below is like the above. The above, in this case, is the macrocosm, the laws of the very large things, okay? The laws that govern the creation, which we consider is seemingly outside of ourselves. So the macrocosm, or the very large, the totality of everything, and the microcosm, which is the very small, or the individuated units that comprise the whole in their aggregate, okay? They are reflections of each other. They cannot be separated from each other. As one goes, the other goes. The universe is actually a holographic system. A hologram is an image, okay? You pass a laser through it, and it then projects a 3D image, okay? It's like a flat image, and it projects a 3-dimensional image. But the aspect, why they call it a holo, like holistic hologram, holistic image, is if you break a hologram into multiple components by cutting it. So if I take a hologram and I cut it in 4 pieces, you don't have a quarter of the image on one part of the hologram and a quarter on the other and a quarter on the third and a quarter on the fourth. You have 4 whole images that only lose their resolution by a quarter. Everything is contained in all the smaller parts. That's like the reality that we're living in. Our universe is a holographic one. So the universe is inside the individual. And the entire universe is like an individual. They're reflections of each other. To know the workings of the individual will help lead us to an understanding of the macrocosmic laws. Similarly, to learn the macrocosmic laws will help us to learn the way that consciousness within the individual functions. These two things cannot be separated from each other. And once again, as I said near the beginning, that's what occulted knowledge is. The knowledge of the occult is how the microcosmic world works, which is the individuated consciousness, and how the macrocosmic world works, which is natural law. So the other part of the principle of correspondence is that our reality is also fractal in nature. Now, if you studied fractals, these are self-similar mathematical generated patterns, okay? We see this through things like Fibonacci sequence in mathematics, and this is repeated endlessly throughout nature. Okay, so you look at the structure of the atom, and it's similar to the structure of the solar system, which is similar to the structure of the galaxy. They work the same way. They look the same. You pull back enough, you'll keep seeing the same pattern repeat. So, the universe is both holographic, meaning that the whole is contained in the parts, and vice versa, and it is fractal or self-similar across all scales of its existence. The principle of gender. Gender exists in everything. Everything has its masculine and its feminine components or principles. We've already seen that when it comes to the human brain, consciousness, worldview, etc. Gender manifests on all planes of existence. Spiritual, mental, physical, everything. Very simple concept. What I want to briefly talk about is mental gender. Mental gender is the state of coexistence between the masculine and feminine aspects of the mind. Again, we've already looked at this. We looked at the breakdown of the physiology of the brain, at least of the higher order part of the brain, the neocortex. Our left brain hemisphere largely facilitates the masculine aspects of the mind, where the intellect, logic, analytical thought, linear thought processes, while the right brain hemisphere largely facilitates the feminine aspect, or intuition, meaning creativity, compassion, and holistic thought processes. The principle of vibration simply states that there is no such thing as rest or non-motion, okay? Death, in that sense, is an illusion, because true death would be the cessation of all motion and energy. There is no such thing. It doesn't exist. You cannot go anywhere in creation where something is at complete rest. You know, that desk has atoms in it, and they're not at rest. They're like in crazy, chaotic motion, especially the, electron clouds of the atom. And if you look at it at a deep enough level, you would see it's like, chaos going on, and it's all kinds of motion happening, seemingly at random. If you zoom into that with a powerful enough microscope, you're going to see all kinds of motion, and nothing's at rest. Okay, so there is no such thing as true rest. It doesn't exist. If something's in existence, it's in motion. Everything moves, everything vibrates, and at the most fundamental level, the universe and every single thing which comprises it is ultimately pure vibratory energy that is manifesting itself in different ways, different frequencies, different vibratory forms. The universe has no true solidity as such, as we imagine solidity at the macrocosmic level. Matter is merely energy in a state of vibration. And what this is, if we truly understand this, and many sciences are now finally really understanding this and trying to propagate this knowledge out into the public, we will come to the understanding that this is a spiritual construct for experience to be gained, to have an experience and learn and grow in consciousness. That's what the purpose of this whole thing is for. Nothing is truly solid. Again, like we say, we are spirit having a human experience. The whole universe is spiritual, having an experience in solidity. The principle of polarity states that everything has a dual nature to it. There are polarities in everything that exists. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. However, opposites, they are identical in nature, but they're different in degree. So let me give you an example of what that means. Are hot and cold really opposites? Or can we simply look at them as the presence of heat energy or the absence of heat energy? Meaning that they're the same thing, energy. And whether it's concentrated in a specific area, which would make it hot, or whether it's absent from a specific area, which would make it cold. That's what hot and cold are at the fundamental level. At our level of perception, they're opposites, but at the fundamental level, they're the same thing, energy or lack thereof. Just like those 3 stages of the trivium. Are knowledge and ignorance the same thing? Yeah, actually they are. Because truth is always present. It's a matter of whether it's taken in and processed, or whether it's refused to be taken in and it's not processed. They're identical in their natures, but they're different in their degree. Extremes can meet and blend and, play with each other, like as depicted in the yin-yang symbol. Masculine and feminine, they need to be blended. And at some level of reality, everything that is seemingly contradictory may be reconciled. Now again, I stress the term at some level. At the unified field level, everything is consciousness, pure consciousness. However, at this level, there are differences in consciousness. At this level, there are things that are taking place that we need to understand. At this level, there are things that we need to set right and rectify, because it does matter. It does matter. Okay? So, yes, can all paradoxes be reconciled? At some level. In this realm, we need to have our feet on the ground in the physical domain. Let's look at the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. Everything has a rhythm to it or a swing to it. There's tendencies that exist in energy. The pendulum swing manifests in everything that we undergo, everything that we perceive. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. It's just an opposite. It's perceived as an opposite. Rhythm will compensate. Now, how this should be understood when we are talking about natural law is many people will say, well, that's just the way the tendency is moving us. It's just the way the tide is taking us. But that's not really accurate. Okay? We can't look at these things as that the rhythms are set in stone and it has to be this way now. One of the things that a lot of the Hermetic tradition taught regarding these laws, these principles, were they can be overcome by higher levels of consciousness. Okay? This one was one of them. Rhythm is a principle that is a tendency for something to swing a certain way. Let's liken it to genetics. If you look at some newer biology, a lot of modern biologists are suggesting consciousness plays into whether a gene activates or not and expresses a certain condition. Well, this is the same way. Let's look at it as you have a boat. You want to row the boat out to sea. You have to get past the tide. You have to get past the breakers and the waves. And if that tide's really strong at high tide, it's going to be very much more difficult. You're going to have to expend more energy to get it out to sea. If, however, you were taking it when the current's moving out to sea, okay, there's a flow that's moving outward deeper into the ocean, and you start rowing that boat then, you're going to be able to do it much more easily. Okay, so if there's winds pushing along a plane, it's going to have to expend less energy. It's going to get there more quickly, okay, because it's adding to the energy. If, however, you're flying against the wind, you got to expend a lot more energy. It's just a tendency. You can still get to where you want to go. You may just have to exert more effort. Right now, we're in a tendency of things are not flowing, okay? It's an ebb. All right, and it's something that needs to really have more energy put into it if we're going to resist the tendency. It doesn't mean nothing can be done about it. It doesn't mean it can't be overcome. It means at the time we're living in, okay, we want to make this motion go in this direction, but its tendency is to move in this direction. So more will is required at this time to move the consciousness. At other times, the consciousness may be flowing in a positive direction, and it may take much less energy in order to move that consciousness forward. However, we're not living in that time. We are living what many researchers have called the Kali Yuga, or the age of darkness and destruction. You know, this is the point that resists the flow in consciousness the most. And it's going to take an enormity of effort to break down these pre-existing belief systems that don't serve who we are.